Okay. So now that you're taking a drink, we're talking about creating destroyable environments, right?
What is this?
Oh, now you want me to talk?
That's how I'm starting the show. Welcome back.
That's right. We're all still, oh my God. We choose a different recording thing and everybody just loses their mind.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another Corona Geek here. We talk all about cross-platform app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we've got a full house, and we're using a brand new tool here to record our sessions. So if you haven't seen this before, it's zoom.us. We're not necessarily, advertising it, but it seems to be a good product. We like the way that the clarity of the video, the clarity of the audio, and there seems to be some good features here, like being able to split out the chat into a separate window and actually hit the save button to save the chat, which is something that we've wanted for a long time. So anyway, we're kind of experimenting is basically the best way to characterize it. And if you don't remember, for those of you who hadn't caught the show in a while, we are on a bi-weekly or every 2 week schedule where we're coming together, doing the Monday Corona Geek, and then in between those times, we're doing things like interviews, developer conversations, general updates, and after Corona Geek After Darks, which are once a month. So a lot of stuff going on in the community, lots of great content coming out. If you guys didn't happen to see it, go watch the interview with Tony Godfrey. He's on the panel here, and we talked all about Hoppyknot. That was a great 32-minute interview with just a ton of information. I think Tony did a great job of not only on the app, but also sharing what he's done with it, and also giving us some resources that we can use in our games as well. So go check out that interview. It's on youtube.com/Corona Geek. All right. Speaking of announcements and things, does anybody on the panel have anything that they want to share or talk about before we get started on today's topic?
Yes.
The only thing that I would say is that the free version of Flappy Fruit Bat is now available on the Apple TV using the App11 plugin. So that went through, so apparently that all worked for him. So I'll put that in the chat notes so we have that.
Yeah, please do. I tell you what, I'm really pleased. You've got that app. You've got what is it? Not Space Invaders. What do you call it? It looks like a
Alien Spacecraft.
Alien Spacecraft looks like a creeper off of Minecraft.
Yeah, right.
And then you've got a couple others, right? Don't you have a couple other Apple TV apps?
Well, just the Flappy Fruit Bat, but I have that as a paid and a free now. I'll be curious to see, because obviously there weren't as many downloads as I was hoping for. Originally from those a couple weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And so I'm hoping that maybe the free version, we'll see how well that does. If maybe there's a lot of people who just want the free stuff right now to check it out, and they're unwilling to pay for stuff. So I'll be curious to see just if people are interested enough on the free stuff just to download it and mess with it a little bit.
It's definitely early days. I mean, even if you search the store, I don't know, maybe a month ago, there really wasn't a whole lot of content there. And it seems like more and more is showing up. And I just this weekend went out and bought my second Apple TV, which is actually like my fifth Apple TV. But the second one that's the one which you can load apps on, the second or fourth generation Apple TV. Yeah, and I did that primarily because I wanted to be able to play games on the Apple TV, but I also wanted it as a development device to put apps on and test and to review apps from the community and stuff like that. And unfortunately, the development unit that I got from Apple has become the primary unit on the family TV. So if I wanted to get on there and use it, I had to kick somebody off the television. So I decided to just go to the store, buy an Apple TV so I'd have a unit that I could use at my discretion. So it's really inspiring, I think, to see so many Corona apps showing up on Apple TV. I've been trying to post those pictures as we go along to Facebook and things like that, but they just keep popping up, especially if you're in the Corona Indie Developer Group on Facebook. People are posting them there, and they're just sort of quietly saying, "Hey, I published this on Apple TV." So I'm trying to collect those together and make a showing there, because the Corona community is really sort of rallying around this platform. I think it's we're still in early days.
Yeah, and I think it's great that AppLovin came out and is supporting it now with ads, because I think people are hesitant to spend money, because I think a lot of people probably don't have the controllers, and they just have the one that came with the remote that came with it, and they're probably hesitant to pay money for things that they don't know how well the controllers are going to work, if it's how good the games are going to be. So I imagine that's what's going on anyway.
Yeah, especially since it's on your television, right? You it's kind of maybe at this point it's sort of it's kind of a novelty. That's cool, but as you say, you're not really sure, and it's going to be locked on your television. It's not like it's in your pocket. If it's in your pocket, you pay 99 cents. You're like, well, I'll have plenty of chances to test it out or maybe get to it later. But if it's on your TV, you might be like, well, my time's a little more limited, so a harder decision to make. I tell you, I was playing Crossy Road, which is, of course, not a Corona-built game, but my daughter hit the reward button or whatever to get to watch an ad, and that came up, and it was one of those aha moments where I was like, we're on the television. I'm watching a commercial, and it really felt natural. I was just like, this is great. Ads actually feel more natural on the television, surprisingly enough, than they do on a mobile device. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah. It's interesting if the commercials on the TV, if they'll change any, because sometimes on the apps they're a little, I don't know how they place the buttons and how they do things and set them up, if they will make them feel more like commercials.
That's a frustration point, I think, for me. Certainly all developers and probably even the consumers, is that make better ads. And make ads that are targeted for the device, and don't show me the same Game of War ad over and over again, because I didn't buy it the first time, and I'm not going to buy it the 47th time, right? Just
the sexy gal on the ad's not going to make you buy that game. Yeah,
and I don't mind seeing that game that ad like every day or every other day, but I don't want to see it in one right after another, right? I mean, it's annoying to the consumer, and as a developer, I'm kind of like, you're really wasting that person's money, by just showing that ad over and over.
That ad is actually quite a waste of bandwidth, as much as you get it from mobile ads.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I pick on them specifically, but
right.
Yeah, definitely. I think the ad companies need to have more content, more varied content, and do a better job of distributing that.
Yeah, and surely you can say, "Oh, this is an Apple TV, so therefore I don't need to show you something that's going to want you to click, right? I'm going to show you something that's just going to be brand awareness, or is going to, drive business some other way." But showing me a mobile ad on a TV doesn't make any sense.
Also, the other thing I was going to mention is that so far, the couple ads or the couple apps that I've ported to use the Facebook Audience plugin, they seem to have definitely get right now anyway, in the short testing time I've had, a couple weeks, maybe a better eCPM than AppLovin and Vungle. So I'm going to keep my eye on that and see if that continues, and if it's across all apps or certain apps or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder if that has to do with Facebook's competitiveness. They really want to make it profitable, so therefore people will use it and they'll dominate the market, or if it has to do with the fact that their demographic is more targeted and people are willing to pay more for that.
Yeah, I don't know. One of the first ones I ported over was Duck Bow Hunt, which has a ton of downloads in India, Southeast Asia, for some reason, and it's done really well with the Facebook thing. And I don't know if it's doing a lot better because Facebook can target that audience better because they have more information versus a Bungle or AppLovin, where maybe they have a problem actually targeting ads for that region. Where I could see Facebook having, they're everywhere. Everybody's, putting in ads for different regions, where maybe Bungle is too heavy in, the US, and maybe they don't have the ads to serve out the correct ads. So maybe in that respect, outside the US, maybe Facebook maybe do a lot better.
Yeah. I tell you, one of these days, if Facebook could become better at search, and then become the de facto search engine, I mean, they would have the right formula. They could, they could topple Google, I think. They definitely have, the demographics and the eyeballs and the audience reach. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. Hey, I want to say one thing I forgot to mention is that we've got the GDC booth design formalized. So everybody who sent in coupons, everybody who sent us coupons, thank you. Everybody who sent us icons, thank you. We are, I don't even know where that came from.
Stop making me laugh. I have a sore neck today.
Okay, sorry. We've got that finalized. There's well over 100 icons on this booth, and I'll send pictures, I'll post pictures, but essentially the booth is split up into two parts. You have one part is sort of the, hey, Corona Labs, and here's the services that we offer, and just sort of the informational piece. And then the other half is this entire 10-foot panel that is going to have icons that just go, from the floor to the ceiling. And then it's beautiful. So, so thanks to everybody who sent in their icons and participated in that. Cool. Anything else? Anybody else want to talk about anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the beta is coming up for my tool this week. I currently have 12 beta testers lined up, not including folks who are in the panel. Basically what I mean by 12 is folks that have written me specifically to be in the beta. It's not too late to participate. I'd like to get as many as 25 people in the beta. So if you're listening,
does it run on Mac OS now?
Sir?
Does it run on Mac OS now?
I still didn't understand that.
Does it run on Mac OS X?
Oh, yes, it runs on Mac. I've updated it to run on Mac OS and Windows. Again, the reason I did that was I was not as familiar with the whole process as I am now. So I deferred it for the beta. So, yeah, so that's coming up this Friday-ish. That's the plan. Cross fingers. And I will let you know.
Okay. We look forward to that. Is there a place where did they just email you directly? Did you say that? They fill out?
Yeah, they email me directly, but there's a forum post where I invited people. I'll send you that link at the end of the show just so you have it.
Yep. I think we linked to that once before. I'll bring it back up to the top.
All right.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
Stephen, did you have anything?
Yeah. Anyone who has wanted meshes and spine, I've basically got that working. And I mentioned it in the thread about it, but I don't know how many people who needed it have seen that thread. There's about 147 votes for it in the feedback, so it sounded like it was in
Is this the feature where people were complaining, hey, other engines and SDKs are supporting this. Why isn't Corona?
Yes.
It makes it so much more efficient.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've basically got it there except for some small animation issues.
And you implemented it, what? It's just a library or what?
I have 3 methods. 2 of them are using the new Canvas texture resource. And another one, I got some help on some shader stuff that isn't quite out there in the public yet, and I use that as well. So
okay.
There are 3 methods. I'll eventually try to streamline it a bit and enhance this mesh utility I've got.
Okay.
But in the meantime, these already work.
Is that something that we should connect you up with some of the engineers and say, hey, try to roll this into Corona?
Well, I think the final version would probably be a little more native than this. But couple of them are aware of it. Vlad is aware of it.
Okay, that's who I was thinking of.
Okay, and I've talked to the guys at Spine themselves about, hey, I've got this going. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Okay, thank you. It's cool.
You're the man.
You're
I'm sure you're going to make a lot of people happy.
Yeah, good job.
About that.
I hope so.
Okay, cool. Well, let's jump into today's topic. We're going to talk about creating destroyable environments, which sounds like a lot of fun. Creating something so that you can destroy it. So, Ed, I'm going to let you describe exactly what we're doing because you know all about it.
I know all about it. Okay, first of all, can you see my screen?
Yes.
The worms. So,
Are we playing worms together?
Sir?
Are we playing worms together?
No, we are not playing worms together. Let me get the original post up here. There was a forums post last week in which the individual asked, is it possible for me to basically create an explosion that removes part of the background? And as soon as I read that, I thought, oh, this guy wants to do something like worms or scorched earth. And then a little bit later, he posted this image saying, this is the effect. I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of small. But he's saying basically, I want to be able to do an explosion and carve out part of the terrain. And yet, I don't just want to carve it out. What I want to be able to do is still have collision detection in this rounded portion. And I thought, oh, okay, I know that's theoretically possible, but my thought is that, well, with Corona, while you could do the cutting part here fairly easily, the collision detection would be more of a challenge because it's not set up for this kind of environment. Now, so what I decided to do was, well, initially I thought, I'm not going to touch this. And then Charles said, hey, what are we talking about this week? I thought, well, this is pretty interesting. So I decided to do a few examples. And what I did was I put together 3 examples, each progressively more robust. And the premise here is that it's more of an exploration of how we would achieve this. And I'm hoping is that some folks will take this code and go, this is a good idea, but I can see a better way. So let me, first of all, show you a couple of screenshots of what I'm talking about, just to put the premise here correct. So this is worms, and this is what most people would think of when they think of destructible environments, like he was describing in his forums post. And in this case, what happens is you're shooting, if you haven't played this game, maybe you haven't, you're a worm, and your goal is to take out all the other worms. And so you're shooting your weapons, and your weapons will take out the worms, destroy them, or do damage to them, but they also do damage to the environment. And so, for example, if this dude were to shoot here, then he would probably take lemon and lime would take some damage, and the environment would be partially destroyed. So it would be removed, and then the physics of it would still be there. You'd be able to walk on it and hit it with other weapons and things like that. If you're old school like me, or if you've been around for a long time, like Charles,
Nice.
sorry, Charles, like myself, you'll remember the old Scorched Earth game. So back in the day when the internet was new and fresh, we had a game that went around in various flavors called Scorched Earth. And Scorched Earth was basically the same idea. It was a hilly terrain with a bunch of tanks or turrets that might be able to move around depending on the version of the game you're playing. And they could shoot a single projectile with a variable velocity and angle. And the premise of this game is figure out how to hit the other guy and take them out, and do some basic physics figuring in your head. So as you play the game, you're like, oh, I shot, but I didn't shoot with enough velocity. So the angle was right, but not enough velocity. Or the wind was blowing too hard. So there were these variables you had to deal with. And then you had different weapons and so on and so forth. But the destructiveness is the same. So, for example, in each of these cases here, you'd see that there's a trajectory, and then the bombs go off. And what would be left is a carved out section here. So that's the premise that I started from.
It sounds like a lot like the old basic. What was it? The monkeys that throw the bananas at each other. Remember that one?
Maybe no, I just don't go that far back, Charles.
Yeah, that's
I'm sorry. That's so true.
That's how old school I am.
I'm such a pain. Okay, so what I did and what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you the code for the first example, and then I'm going to just show you the next two examples running and talk about what the differences are. So in our first example, what I've done is I've just created a grid of ground blocks, and then you'll see this line here. Now this red line is basically I can click anywhere on the screen, and if I click below the line, I create a white ball that does no damage, and its purpose is to demonstrate that the physics is still working and that the balls will roll around and do their thing. And these self-destruct after 10 seconds to get them out of the scene. But if I click above the line, and it's a little bit slow because of the recording here, if I click above the line, I create a bomb. So basically it's just a ball that will do damage. And as you can see, as I click balls or drop them, when they hit the ground, they carve out a block. So this is the very most rudimentary example. This is the starting point for this whole idea. So what you've got on the screen is these blocks, and every block has a physics body. And this, I can tell you right now, this is not the way to do it. But it's the point where everybody go, okay, that's how I think it should work. I could do that. I could just put blocks on the screen and give them physics bodies and collision detection. I'm all good, done. But what will happen is you will run this game, and let me go ahead and restart it. Yeah, this recording is cranking down my machine here, so the frame rates are going to be a little bit off for this demo. This should be running at over 60 frames a second or peaking out, and it's not. But what you'll see if you play this and then you put it on your mobile device is it will tank. Actually, I've tuned this particular one so that it still runs at 60 frames a second on mobile. But if you start to make these blocks smaller, so you have more and more blocks with physics bodies, it all tanks. Your frame rate goes down and down and down, and then it becomes unplayable. So still, let's start here and take a look at the very basic premise of this concept. Again, the concept is you lay out blocks with physics bodies. There is a point on the screen where you can click and drop a ball. And above this red line, you can click and drop a ball that does damage and destroys whatever it hits. And the code looks like this. Now, I'm going to distribute the code after the show. And the code basically comes in a folder called, sorry, let me bring it up, Scorched Earth. Just I had to give it a name. And there is a folder Scorched 1, Scorched 2, and Scorched 3. And each of these is the progressively more involved example. Scorched 1 is the one we're looking at, and and inside the code I just call it the poor man's destroyable environment. And the way it works is, at the very top of the file, I set up some variables like the width and the height of the screen, and I use the actual content width and height just to make my life easy, so I can go whatever size display you use, whatever device you use, this will always be the total width and height of that device. Some variables for the center of the screen, center X, center Y. And then because they might be useful, I set up some variables that basically tell me the leftmost edge, the rightmost edge, the top and the bottom of this screen for the device that I'm using. Just for feedback, I'm including the meter that I've used in many of our other examples. And this meter is, let me bring it up here. This right up here that shows us how much memory we're using, how much texture memory we are using, and then a very rudimentary count for the frame rate. It's not a very accurate counter, but it gives you a sort of a line in the sand. And then in here we have, let's see, one function for building the ground, another function that will drop a ball or a bomb depending on where we have clicked on the screen. And then the very bottom of the code is just us calling these functions. So let me work through what we call first, and then I'll show you the basic guts of this code. So when we actually run the code, we build the ground, then we draw a line on the screen, we set it to red, and we make it, we give it a stroke width of 6 so that it shows up on all devices very clearly. This line is in the vertical center of the screen. So clicking above is red or a bomb, and clicking below is a ball. And then step 3, we add a runtime touch listener whose job it is to call the ball/bomb dropping function. In other words, if we click on the screen, this function is called. And then very last, I create the meters. And so, this part's not very important, but it's useful as far as getting a little feedback. So our first function is the ground creation function. Let's go find it. This is all in one file. Here it is. So starting on line 28, the way I set this up is I just arbitrarily decided that a block of ground was going to be 20 pixels on a side, so a square that's 20 by 20. And then you'll have seen me do this in many of my examples. All I've done is basically created a loop wherein I said I'm going to start at this position, and then I'm going to go row by row or column by column, and I'm just going to fill in the screen. I'm going to keep iterating until I get to the bottommost corner, and I'm done. So that is what this code in a nutshell does. It says start at the upper left XY position. So that's the left side of the screen, half a block size. That way it pushes this block out 1/2. That's where it starts right there. Starting Y is the bottom of the screen. And then 10.5 block sizes up. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And the reason it's 11 is because I'm going to iterate from this position until the Y that I currently have set is below the bottom of the screen, equal to or below the bottom of the screen. In other words, I hit the bottom, stop iterating. And so with that information, I simply set my current X, Y position. So that would be this very first block here. Current X, Y would start there. And then I iterate, and I say, well, X is less than right, and Y is less than bottom. Go through this loop, create a block, make it green, give it a yellow stroke, make that stroke width 1. So we get this nice little effect here. We can see the individual blocks. Add a physics body, make it static, give it some friction, give it a little bit of bounce. Increment X. In other words, make this block first, make the next block, make the next block. If the X has gone beyond the right side of the screen, increment our Y counter by 1 block size. If the current Y is less than the bottom, start the X over. So it looks like what I'm doing here is, I always get these mixed up in my head. I made a better loop for the third example, a little more clear. I can't remember here if this means I'm iterating to the right or down. It looks like I'm iterating to the right, and then I'm going down by 1 Y and resetting the X position. Yeah, okay. Right. So if the current Y is still above the bottom, then make the current X start X, so it goes all the way to the right, goes down to the next row, starts again, and does it over and over. And that is, it's a very simple technique for laying out a flat, a terrain that has no bumps, no hills, nothing like that. So the next step in our code was to draw the line. Nothing very special about that. That just produces this. It's visual feedback for the user, so they know, again, if they click below, they get a white ball, and above, they get a bomb. And then we do the runtime event listener. So let's go ahead and take a look at the ball bomb creator, which starts on line 59. And this is a event listener for the touch event. It takes the event argument. And in here, I set a ball bomb radius to 10. I could make this 20 if I wanted, and then rerun this, and my ball or bomb would be twice as large. But I like 10. That's a good size. And I made this very simple. Basically, when we come in here, I only care about the end of the click. So if they click and they move their mouse around, so I click and I move it around, nothing happens. But as soon as I release the click, the ball drops. Whoops, almost knocked my water over in my lap. That would have been exciting. So ignore every phase except for the ended. If it's not the ended phase, just leave. If it is the ended phase, continue. Then what we do is we check to see where they clicked. If they clicked above the center of the screen, it's a bomb. And just a reminder, Y starts at 0 and increases as you go down. So Y increases as you go down the screen, not up. This is people, when they first see this and they're not familiar with game development environments and graphics environments, they always get that backwards, because traditionally Y is positive upwards. But in this environment, X goes from the left to right, increasing, and the Y increases from the top to the bottom. So if they click and it is less than the center, so this is the center and a value that is less than the center would be up here, then it is a bomb. And so we mark this flag as it is a bomb. Then we create a circle. We give it the radius that we specified, and we put it where they clicked, the event X and Y. And then we look at our flag and we say, oh, it's a bomb? All right, then let's make it red. Otherwise, leave it the default white color, which is the default fill for an object. If you haven't set any other environmental variables or settings, is white. If it is not a bomb, our next step, then wait 10 seconds, 10,000 milliseconds, and call display remove to remove the object. Just get it off the screen. In either case, ball or bomb, we need to add a physics body, make it dynamic, give it a little bit of friction, give it a little bit of bounce, make sure the radius matches the circle radius. And then, if it is a bomb, we need to add a collision detection function. So we don't need a collision detection function for the balls, because all they're going to do is hit the ground and sit there. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to respond to the collision. They're just going to sit there. That is, they are going to respond, but they are not going to execute any code in response to that collision event. However, the bomb has the job of destroying any object it touches. So if it is a bomb, we attach a collision function to the object that we just created. Takes the argument self and event. Again, I'm very lazy in this case. I only care about events that are began. So what I'm saying here is as soon as it hits something, do the damage. Do whatever your job is. Ignore all the other phases. So any other phase, it simply pops out and ignores it. However, begin comes first, so we're always going to get that. What we do in here is very simple. We delete, we remove whatever object we hit, which is going to be contained in the event other variable, and then we destroy ourselves. So this line here destroys the thing we hit, and this line here destroys the bomb itself. And then it will be automatically removed. The body will automatically be removed in the next frame. It's gone, done. We don't even have to do a remove event listener, but if I wanted to be absolutely clear, say if I could do self, this is not necessary, but it's cleaner. Self, remove event listener collision. In other words, don't act on any more collision events, and then remove the thing I'm destroying, and then remove the bomb, and we're done. So with that small piece of code, we have created our very rudimentary environment in which we can drop a bomb or an object, we can have a collision, and destroy part of our environment. So, not very exciting, not very sexy, doesn't even look very good. So let's take this whole thing up to the next level. The next level is Scorched 2. Now, Scorched 2 is the same example, but what I've done is a very little Steve trick. I'm going to call it a Steve trick or a Barry trick, because these two guys do all these rendering tricks. So what I've done here is I've created a series of blocks, but you can't tell. Each one of these blocks is made up of a bunch of smaller blocks, And then in that block, I have used an image fill that is scaled and translated so that the image aligns with where that block represents on the entire image. And I know you're like, what? Let me make this more clear. I'm going to change the debug code a little bit so you can see the outlines of these blocks. Let me just, let me find it here. Actually, why don't I do it on the screen? Screen, help me out. Let's not change windows in the middle of our example. Let's see, stroke. And let's see, display new, and equals, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to put the yellow stroke around the blocks now.
And what's our goal for doing this so we know kind of where we're headed?
Okay, yeah, so our goal here was to make it look nicer. So the last one was ugly. It was just green blocks with red balls. Not very nice. This is much closer to what the guy was trying to do. What he wanted, sorry, I just typed something. What he wanted was a nice looking environment where he could destroy parts of it and have the background and everything bleed through and have the visuals look much better. So with that in mind, I did this. Now this is more clear. So again, I'm creating the same blocks, but each little block has a graphic that is properly scaled and translated to make it look like they are in fact contiguous ground blocks. Like each one of these big blocks is an object. And again, now I can drop balls and I can destroy parts of the environment. So if I turn off my debug code here, let me just turn that off. This will look a little bit more reasonable. So we're getting closer to what we want to do. So now we have an environment that has some graphical elements. We can destroy parts of it. But it's still not quite, it's not Worms. You know, it's too blocky. That's the biggest problem with this is if you want to make this more less granular, you want to make the bits smaller and smaller so you can destroy finer and finer details. You run into this issue where you're creating too many blocks, you're creating too many physics bodies, there's too much data to track. So the lesson here, before I go on to the example 3, is that you have to start with the basic understanding, the premise of what you're doing, which is you're creating the ground for this example, and the ground is destroyable. You want smaller and smaller parts of that ground to be destroyable. You need some way to detect collisions with that so that objects in your game can be kept above the ground when they're walking on it. Things can hit the ground. And yet you need to find a way to sort of like balance all this so that you're not sucking up all your computing power purely just drawing the ground and dealing with the collisions. So the next refinement on this, I went back and I didn't bother with the graphical rendering. But instead what I did was I started to find a way to reduce the size of the ground bits. So what you're seeing here is it's the same example as the first one, but now the ground bits are very small and they're much smaller. And now we have a lumpy terrain in a sense. We have hills and valleys. But the problem is now we've got a ton of blocks. And I'll tell you now that in this example, almost none of these blocks have physics bodies. Because one of the ways you can take a lot of computing out of your game is to reduce the number of physics bodies. In fact, let me turn on the debug feature so you can see what's going on. I will turn on hybrid drawing for physics, line 23 in the Scorch 3 example, and we'll reload it. And you'll see what I've done is I've only given physics bodies to the very topmost elements of my terrain. All the other bits do not have physics bodies. Why? Because you can't touch them. They're underneath another physics body. They're inaccessible. So now, the way this one works is it creates the terrain, chooses some random height for each column, creates a bunch of columns, so we get this hill and valley effect, and the very topmost entry in each one gets a physics body. And then when we destroy those physics bodies, new physics bodies are put on the topmost element for each column so that we always have a physics body to hit as we dig into our terrain. However, this is a progressive improvement, gives us more granularity or less granularity. I can't seem to get that right in my head. But we now have a problem. Let me dig a little bit into the terrain here, and I'll show you the problem. All right, let's put some light balls in there. Boop. There's our problem right there. Why is our white ball falling through the terrain? Well, you can see it here. There's no body attached to these blocks. So my thought here is the next progressive improvement would be for the algorithm that's doing the drawing to detect vertical, which we already have, vertical exposure, and then horizontal exposure. So in other words, do what we're doing now, put physics bodies on the edges at the top, but also detect when a cliff face is exposed to air, in a sense, and put a body on that block too. So this further refines things. However, I'm going to tell you that the next step obviously it will increase the number of bodies that you could potentially have in your game, and at some point it's going to hurt you in terms of rendering speed because you're going to be doing too much physics work. So the next step after that is to try to find situations where you can draw one physics body instead of multiple physics bodies. For example, on this cliff face, really, if we made this physics body start here and end down here, that would save us several, like 6 physics bodies, and give us the same result, is a cliff face that now can be touched and hit and removed.
Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
Can we open it up to the panel to see if they've got any
So
ideas?
at this point, I'm done talking, really. And I'd be more than happy to hear people's ideas and poke holes in the whole idea here.
Well, I see that the chat is going crazy. So
Yeah, I saw that too. So go for it, you guys.
So maybe I start.
Yeah.
Before I was working with physics on one project with a client. It was using lines, and I find using display new line a pretty good solution for similar tasks, that you can outline your area with display new line, apply physics to it, and it will work fine. So as a collision detector. But of course, you will have to, on each collision, you have to recalculate all the vertices of the line and recreate the body and make it visual somehow. So this is a problem, but it is not too hard to make. It's manageable. And display new line is working only as a static physics objects, not dynamic. So this can be a solution using physics.
Yeah, that's actually, for a long time, I've heard people in the forum say, can I put physics bodies on lines? And the answer's always been kind of like, well, you can, but maybe you shouldn't. But then the real answer was, yeah, you can and you should if you know what you're doing. And the trick is to make sure the physics body is thick enough and that you've got is bullet, set so you don't pass through the very thin body that you're dealing with, or you do something else to make sure that body can't be tunneled, basically. So yeah, I can see how your solution, your idea of using lines, would be a workable solution. I have a question for you. Was it a multi-segment line, so a multi-vertex line? Could you create a body on that, or was it?
Yes, it was a line with many segments on it. So you have line, you create lines, then you append the line with the next coordinate with, I don't remember how it was, line 2 or something like that. And physics body creates nicely, so it works.
I'm talking muted. Excellent. That's definitely would be an improvement over what I've done here, because that would reduce the number of physics bodies dramatically.
I mean, it looks to me that for something like this, first you have to have a very clear idea of what you're trying to achieve. Now, as I was mentioning in chat, one of my first solutions is always to ditch the physics engine, but bearing in mind that a lot of people will take this approach. I mean, for example, here you have a solid terrain, okay? And the implication from the demos here is that you can only destroy vertically. And that may not be a limitation, but it's actually useful because it makes the solution easier to solve. If you showed some terrain like in worms, that worms image, then you're going to have lots of overhangs and things like that. And one of the issues there, for example, is if you destroy enough terrain to start ending up with discrete bodies of terrain, and then that can make things a little bit more complicated still. But it seems to me that if you're going to approach the physics side of it like this, then Lurg's solution is pretty good, I think. It's probably the most solid way of doing it. But again,
I just wanted to say, Barry, I could count on you for the let's remove physics from the equation. You always say that. So I knew that if you were on the show today,
I'm
that
so
you would
sorry.
say, no, Ed, remove physics.
Well, the thing is, I have already worked out how to do a full-style Lemmings version of this, but it requires a fair amount of setting up. You would need to maintain a copy of the map purely in RAM. So then you're talking about binary operations and stuff like that. There's no connection to the real physical world. So we'll leave that one for now.
Okay.
I just wanted to say one thing. I gave you a hard time, but I wanted to reiterate what you said, which is Barry said here is that you need to approach this knowing what your end goal is, because that can dramatically affect the solution you choose. For example, as Barry said, in my example, very simple. Just vertical collisions were the goal. But a worms environment, now you've got discrete segments of the environment that can be carved out, and that would be a completely different mathematical solution if you really dug down into it. So I agree, Barry is right. You have to know in advance, which is why you want to spec out your game and talk about, before you ever write a line of code, and spec out what all the different kind of interactions can be, because this will definitely tell you the best way, typically, to approach it.
By the way, your ground will look much better if you just replace rectangles with overlapping square or circles. It will be great.
It also might be simpler physics. I can't remember if we get a bonus on physics if we use circular collision.
I don't think so.
You think it's about the same flaw?
Its size is the same or harder because it involves square root, right?
Right.
What was that, Barry? What did you say?
I think circle against circle physics has to be about as simple as it gets. It's just a distance check. A circle against a square is actually fairly complicated. So you might get a speed up on that. But the thing is, these libraries are probably so quick that we're talking about a difference measured in milliseconds for a single microseconds for a single collision. I don't know if it would make a difference, but in theory, it should be quicker.
We might be paying more penalty for the numerous calls to the API itself than for the individual calculations, right?
So Ed, in the original forum post, the example that you showed in the beginning showed this half round carved out section of the ground. Would that be accomplished like the panel was saying with circles, or would that still not result what we want?
We haven't really talked. We spent the latter half here of the show talking about the physics solutions, but we really haven't talked about how to get a more beautiful, nicer, cleaner looking rendering. So the nice smooth valley. So I'll answer your question. The answer to your question is probably that we would use something like lines. The line solution would probably be closer to that. You'd get a much better approximation of that shape as far as the physics part goes. But the rendering part that we haven't talked about, what I thought the solution might be is Jason, when he did his, he did a wheel. What do you call it? A wheel. A timer, a spinning wheel.
Progress wheel.
Progress wheel, right. And when he did his progress wheel, he did something very interesting. He generated a mask dynamically. And when he did that, that for me opened up the world of generating masks dynamically. And in this case, if you had an image that represented your terrain, my theory is, I haven't proven this, is that you could iteratively create a mask, add to it, replace it, and continue to add carved out segments to that mask that would carve the image the way we're seeing it there. In other words, you have an explosion, you create a little circular explosion mark on your mask image, you destroy the mask image you were using, you replace it with a new image you've just saved, and you continue to iteratively apply this modified masking image to the terrain to make it look like it's being carved. I think you could do something like that. So in other words,
I think you can make an image like this where you have a normal ground, a normal level, and all the ground is painted, for example, green, and render to snapshot and apply a custom shader effect that replaces all green pixels with from another texture that you can pass to shader effect, and it will
that's good.
Convert the green color into a repeatable texture of ground.
That's a much better idea than mine, because mine required a render, a display save, a disk access, a removal of a. But yours can be done directly in the shader, which is only like 2 steps. So it's significantly faster, no matter how you look at it, stepwise, and using hardware to do the work. So I like that idea.
Yeah,
Definitely like that idea.
I was doing something with this where I was trying to generate a mask with all the combinations of pixels etched out or added in, and they add up really quickly because I got it down to where I had 16 pixels, but that would be 64K possibilities. I narrowed those down by not allowing just isolated pixels, and it got into a range of about 230 possible images, but it takes a long time to generate the image.
No, Stephen, we know that you can do this, and we're going to rely upon you to have a working example for next show. That's what you get for messing with shaders, buddy.
Yeah.
You or Barry have to come to the next show with a solution for carving out arbitrary portions of a shape.
Well, I have something, but I don't know if I can show it because it was a kind of a contract. But I can maybe isolate it.
Yeah, it seems like the whole shader discussion, I agree, is voodoo to me, and I think it probably is to a lot of people. We may get intellectually that, oh yeah, you would use a shader and you would do something programmatically, and here, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like shaders are just sort of black magic to me.
Well, let's be clear. We're only talking about the visual representation of the damage here. We're not talking about doing the collision detection. Essentially, think of it as having a dynamic mask. That's all, and you're using the shader to apply that mask to the scenery. That's all we're talking about now, which is relatively simple and visually is pretty much the perfect solution.
Okay, so essentially the damage would be, the mask would be over the area where the damage is appears to be, and somehow you would keep track of that? Is that what we're saying? You'd have to keep track of all that?
Well, Lerg mentioned it with a snapshot, but I think really canvases are the way to go here. You would draw your level at the start, and then you would probably have another copy of that in black and white, let's say, to treat as the mask. And then when you want to remove a circle of scenery, you just stick in a white circle, a black circle into that canvas. Yeah, so it just essentially is changing a black and white mask image, and then the shader just combines that. So you can just keep adding in more and more sprites into for more damage, and then the mask will update automatically. Whether the physics can match that accurately enough is a slightly separate issue. But actually updating the mask is a relatively trivial solution. This is probably one of the simplest but best uses for shaders.
Okay, I'm offline on a sidebar. I'm gonna rope either Barry and or Steven into putting together an example. because I can I know everybody out there listening is like, yeah, let's do that, right? And we're just all excited about it, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, it just makes me drool. I don't know, my eyes glaze over.
Okay. This is one of those things that I've always really wanted, which is the multi-mask, the multi-source mask. Like normally you can have I got a circle mask. I can have one circle. I got a flashlight effect. I want 2 flashlights. Forget it. Can't do it. But you can do it. You just got to know how to do it. So, show us.
Yes.
We are on a positive note.
Again, I got work. I got homework. Wait, I'm not supposed to get homework from the show.
At least we now have 2 weeks to do it.
Right.
On a positive note, I want to mention that previously such sort of thing would not be possible in Corona, but in recent years it's getting much, much better in supporting stuff like this. So this is a great way Corona moves.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a lot more power, and that's the trick is we just need to learn how to take advantage of it. So, all right. Well, there you go. There's a destructible environment. So obviously, from the conversation, I think we should take away this simple fact that there are multiple ways to do it. There isn't one silver bullet, and there's not one particular situation because, as Ed pointed out, worms environment may be different than what you're trying to accomplish. So what I heard there in the presentation was know what your end goal is and then look for a variety of different ways to accomplish it. And the first way might just be proving the concept and getting a basic example up and running, and then beyond that you can optimize and massage and refine and finesse. So reach out on the forums if you have questions about this stuff. This whole example was spurred by a question that was asked on the forums, and there are a lot of smart people there in the forums who can help you, and the answer will benefit everybody. That's what I tell people when they ask questions on YouTube or on social media. I'm like, 140 characters, go ask on the forums. There's smart people over there. They can help you. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here today. Just as a reminder, again, one final friendly reminder, we will be back in 2 weeks for a Corona Geek Hangout. And if all goes well, we will be using this Zoom format. So if you want to be a part of the show, just let us know, and we will invite you to the panel, and you can be part of the discussion. Until then, have a great 2 weeks, and happy coding.
Cheers.